My husband and my child are yelling in the kitchen, so I'm gonna wait until they calm down. What's up, y'all? This is Alana Marie. Welcome back to my channel, a community for novice and experienced documentary filmmakers and other visual content creators. Today we are going to be talking about how to prepare your documentary subject for their upcoming interview. Let's get into it. So first and foremost for you, research. Most important part is research. Really discern what brought you to the subject in the first place. What is it that drew you to them, that made you feel like they would be a quality subject to sit down and provide their information and their expertise on your documentary subject matter. So a couple of my interview subjects for my documentary had quite an extensive catalog of articles written about them from the past, and I would fine tooth those articles. I would read through the work that they've done. I would read through specific quotes, because for my topic or my documentary, I knew I wanted certain subjects for specific topics within the film. And so that helped me better prepare my interview questions, so I would know when they do sit down with me, I am being considerate of my time. I am being considerate of their time, because I've already pinpointed what is it about them that I want to ask them about. So for my documentary, the section that's about education, if I'm interviewing a teacher, I only want to know about their time during that period of them being a teacher in that specific time period. I don't need to know about their upbringing. I don't need to know about their current life, only if it's relevant. But that really shows that you've done your part. That really shows that you care about what it is that you are doing, and that you are appreciative of their time and their expertise before they even sit down in the chair. Another thing that I do to ensure that this person that I'm wanting to interview, while they may look good on paper, will they translate over to the camera. So I'll screen them and I'll do pre-interviews over the phone. How interview subjects interact over the phone will also look different compared to sitting down in front of the camera with lights just beaming on your face the entire time. People don't usually sit down in front of the camera every single day, so it's a learned behavior, and my job is to make them feel comfortable. But before we even sit down, I want to make sure, is this going to be a good fit? I'll get on the phone with them, I'll debrief them on what the topic is, and I'll kind of gauge their comfort level from there. Do they speak in full sentences? Are they constant run-on sentences? Is their first response to my question always an I don't know? Are they hesitant to answer a lot of questions of mine? And that'll also let me know this may not be the person that I want to sit down with. So just because somebody looks good on paper and you feel like it would be, an audience reeler if that specific name is a part of your film, that does not always translate well on film. So I always encourage to do pre-screening interviews with your subjects before committing to a time and a date to actually sit down with them. And if it doesn't work out, if you learn, on the phone that this may not be the best person for your film, that's okay. Ask them if they may know anybody else who would be interested, and if it would be okay for them to pass along the contact. So what I would do, I will ask, hey, can you reach out to them to let them know to be expecting a phone call from me, so it's not just so out of the blue and random. I don't like unsolicited phone calls. I don't like talking on the phone, first of all. But I don't like unsolicited phone calls. So to let them know, hey, can you let them know? And for the most part, it's always been fine. But that's always a good tip before you fully commit to that interview. Another thing to consider, location. So another thing that I would do is, if I do the pre-screening interview and I find that the subject is good, I will inquire, is it okay if we conduct the interview in their space, or see where they're most comfortable? I would prefer to do it in their space, because that is where they're most comfortable. Or if they don't want people in their home, they don't want people that they don't know in their home, do you need to go ahead and plan to rent out a space? Or I've done both. I've rented out spaces for people to come to, especially when I've had bulk production days where I've had like 3 or 4 or 5 interviews. I will personally put it upon myself to find a place, because I can control that environment. I will rent out the space for an entire day, and they will come. I will try to find a neutral location based on where my subjects live and conduct the interviews there. And I've also done interviews in their home, but you can't control that environment. So say if they have kids, if they have other people living in the home, if a loud air conditioning, those are settings that you cannot control. So that's a question that you need to ask well in advance so you can prepare for how to maneuver. Should you have to adjust, or should you have to pivot, or should you have to come out of additional pocket to find a location to conduct that interview. Release form. So this is also a part of the process when you're actually sitting down in front of them to conduct the interview. But in my mind, I will already have a release form printed out and pre-written on by me. So release form is what you provide to your interview subjects with them granting you permission to use their likeness on film. So when you sit down with them and you turn that camera on, I will get a verbal confirmation that it is okay for me to film them, but also I get a written confirmation in the release form that I can use their likeness. So use the material that they provide me when we sit down for the interview for my future project. And so I will have it handy. I will have it in a folder. I will print their name at the top. And when I see them in person, they will go ahead and sign it, date it, and I have all of that already prepared in my production bag. Another thing to consider and to inform your subject about is attire. What is inappropriate? I don't think inappropriate is actually the word. It's not inappropriate. What is best? What's the best attire to wear on camera that'll translate well onto the camera? Like the shirt I have on now, these bright patterns, these abstract shapes. This would actually not be very good for a documentary interview. Neutrals, blacks do really, really well on camera. So but your stark whites or your reds or bright oranges, those do not translate well on camera. So to let them know that in advance. My husband and my child are yelling in the kitchen, so I'm gonna wait until they calm down. Go on, come in. This is about how to, I'm filming too, so you're in the video. Okay. How to prepare your interview subject for the documentary. Devin.
Oh, you're over there.
I'm over here. And these last few, I had wrote them down to do them separately, separate bullet points. But really, this can all be in one, because what I typically do when I confirm the interview, I will send a email or I will call them. I will call them 2 days before the interview, 2 days or maybe a day before the interview, and I will send a confirmation email. And that confirmation email will be the location that we decided on, the time that we decided on to actually start filming, but also the time for them to be there if it's off-site, or a time for us to arrive, but if it is in their home. So the call time, I try to do at least 30 minutes to 45 minutes before we start filming to give my DP, director of photography, enough time to get his equipment set up, to make sure everything is how it's supposed to, the lighting is good, to check for the audio, and just to make sure that all of the settings are in place before we actually sit down and begin recording. So the times, both the call time and the film time, the address, location in which we'll be filming, what they need to wear, letting them know that having other people in the space, at least as far as in the interview, I can't tell them that they can't have people in their home. But as far as where we will be interviewing, that they are the only person allowed in that space. I also let them know, I don't let my interview subjects know the specific questions that I ask them, that I will be asking them, but I do let them know the topic in which we'll be talking about. And so to let them know that they can kind of get thoughts flowing in their mind about the subject, but not necessarily the specific question, because it'll translate as if they're reading from a cue card, and that is easily spotted on camera, and I don't want that. So it's not to bombard them or surprise them with questions, because I also let them know that if there's a question that I ask that they're not comfortable answering, or they legit don't know the answer to, they can tell me I'm not comfortable answering, or I don't know the answer to it. The latter has happened before, the former has not. So nobody's ever told me that they're not comfortable answering a question. And I'll kind of gauge, and I'll talk more about this in how to conduct an interview. I'll gauge their temperament during our interview to know what to probe and what to let go of, which is an art in and of itself. But I like to let them know as much details as possible via email, via phone call, to make sure that we are both on the same page. I will CC my production team to that email as well, to have a running thread and a paper trail for myself. And lastly, thank them. Thank them for their time in the pre-interview. Thank them for even considering if the answer is no. thank them before the interview happens, and especially thank them after the interview happens. Sitting down to, you know, share your expertise and your insight and your knowledge on camera with lights to people who you don't know from Adam and you may not ever see again. Like, that is nothing to be taken for granted. And I appreciate each and every person who has ever sat down for my film project, even the ones who I ended up not using in the final version of the film, but the fact that they took out their time to share that with me, like, that's golden. And I informed them profusely that I am super grateful for them to take the time out with me, share that with me and with my future audience for my film. So those are some of the tips that I use when I'm preparing my documentary subject for our upcoming interview. I hope that some of these or all of these rather, were useful to you. And these are just things to make your preparation a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient. And, you know, you feel a little bit more, you know, professional when you walk into the space because you've done your job. You've done your job. You are the leader of your team because you're putting the production team together, but also the interview subject is trusting in you to guide them throughout that process from the start of it all the way till you're done and you press stop on that camera. So I hope you found this useful. If you have, please hit the like and subscribe button on my channel. I plan to upload every single Friday. We'll be talking about other documentary filmmaking tips for novice and experienced filmmakers, but also those who are in the creative lifestyle, creating visual and digital content every single day. Till next time, and